This is the voice of freedom. We are not one voice. We are many. We are your voice. But we can only be effective if you use your voice. Your voice. This is the voice of freedom. We will not hide from the truth. We will ask the hard questions until we are sure we have the truth. Welcome to the voice of freedom, where your voice will never be silenced.
And good evening, folks. Welcome to the North Motton Hall in northwest Tasmania. I got to say, we have a rowdy little crowd. I've been listening to some of the conversations that have been going on outside the door. Can I tell you that the food here, folks, is fabulous. Thank you to everybody who brought a plate. I gather that's how that worked, did it? See, I grew up in a country town that wasn't much bigger than North Motton. And whenever there was something happening, we all went to the local hall and everybody's mum brought a plate. Everybody's. So, and it was always the best food. I can only, begin to think that after having driven today with Black Sheep, my host, from Launceston up through here, and having seen some of the beautiful ground you have, I remember it brought back memories to me of Koroit in Victoria, where my uncle used to have a spud farm, and I used to go and spend my summers picking spuds. Rolling green hills, beautiful, beautiful, fertile soil. Yours is a different colour than that in Koroit, but it is very similar to the ground that is outside of Bundaberg in Queensland, and I imagine just as fertile. And so I imagine a lot of the produce, if not everything, was grown here in fresh and brought fresh from your gardens, maybe, potentially. And that is the way that we are going to go forward. I can't tell you, you've probably seen a lot of what we've done over the last couple of weeks, particularly with Darren Bergwerf in Victoria with My Place. And tonight we were going to talk about My Place, but you already have a My Place. You already have this place. And the group that youll, who I'll introduce you to shortly, has helped put together is a unifying group, an educational group. It's bringing people together. And I was speaking with, I think it was Andrew earlier, who was saying he's come up from Launceston and he loves coming up here, even though he's an outlander. He loves coming up here and being part of the group because he feels like he is part of the group, part of the community and with friends. And that's all I ever want to come into and try and build, if it's not already there, a My Place, just like your place, because your place is bloody great, folks. Absolutely great. You should give yourselves a round of applause. Now, over on the mainland, we hear a few stories about you northwest Taswegians. Admittedly, we don't hear them a lot because we're told you don't communicate with the world. In fact, if you have a communication, it's probably got something to do with a tin, some string, and, you know, a length of it going between houses. I don't believe that to be the case. Tonight, the piece of crap is working. So we know the mobile phones are working, but obviously there is a very tight-knit community here that has seen some concerning things on the horizon and have been preparing for them. Now, we've spoken about prepping. Go to the supermarket, buy a tin of tomatoes, put it in the cupboard, buy some spaghetti, put it in the cupboard. Buy whatever you can, put it in the cupboard. Well, right here, they do it a little bit differently. They grow everything, they keep everything, they preserve everything. And tonight, we're going to let you in on a few little secrets from North Motton Hall about just what the preppers in northwest Tasmania are all about. Ladies and gentlemen, can I get you to put your hands together for the man that, I'm not going to say leads, he just contributes a lot. Youll, please, ladies and gentlemen. Phil, you've got your own microphone, so we'll share. This is the little box you have to stay inside of, okay? You're all good with that? All right, very good. The stick you have in your hand is for speaking into, not waving around. Okay, that's my computer telling me to remember something. Phil, when did you first see that prepping for something was going to be required?
Interesting question. I'm not actually sure about that. Certainly the COVID fraud, which I picked right from day one, indicated that things were getting more serious. I'd got involved with the cash ban legislation, and whereas I'd had my doubts about the government, that certainly made me aware that they're corrupt, that there's corrupt elements. It doesn't mean all the government's corrupt, and it doesn't mean that government as such is not essential, but it's been corrupted by forces that are of no help to the people. And looking at the cash ban legislation made me aware of the bail-in legislation that had gone ahead before it, and then you start looking that they'd passed legislation to allow foreign troops and the UN into the country, and anything they did, they weren't legally liable for. And the first question you would have is, well, why would you pass legislation like that? And you start to think, well, obviously you've got an agenda, you've got something in mind, something's coming our way. And once you start to see the fraud, then you can't not see it. It's just everywhere. So when COVID started, it was obviously a fraud. And so you know straight away not to believe anything that's said, that it's all a deception. And you start looking at all the clues and postulating what might come from that, and hence what do I need to do? How do I position myself to try to rebut what they're doing, or survive what they're doing long enough to have another crack at rebutting? So, yeah, it's evolved.
So from a little boy, were you looking at the fruit on the trees thinking, gee, how can I keep that for a rainy day?
Certainly my mother was a fantastic grower of food and preserver of food. And so there was a basis there, but of course Mum always did that, so there's no need for me to do it. I just ate the food. So still do that.
But you learned the process.
Well, aware of the process. And we've got some women in our group here who are just fabulous at doing that sort of stuff and very good at educating the rest of us. So what we try to do is utilise the skills. We've got a very diverse group of people in our group, and they all have skills. Everyone has strengths. It's easy to see the weaknesses. The important thing is to try and recognise the strengths that they have and draw it out of them. Some people, not looking at anyone in particular, off with your head, she says, don't recognise they have strengths. Someone that I'm teasing these days about being a little old lady, didn't recognise, yeah, I see you, didn't recognise that she had strengths. But it's a case of recognising what your strengths are. Not recognising your weaknesses. The weaknesses are the easy thing to see. But as a collective, as a community, the strengths of one can cover for the weaknesses of the other. If we work together, then we're unassailable. But getting that community spirit and developing the trust, all the things that they've tried to beat out of us, we have to try and reclaim. And trust would be one of those. Acting in honour would be one of those. You have to be honourable and do that which is right, that you know is right. People know right from wrong, but they have to have the courage and the self-discipline to do what they know is right. And that's a big step because we've been indoctrinated to head in the opposite direction. So
yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes making that step, turning around on the path you've been following when you recognise it's wrong, can be very difficult to do, very difficult to do. Thankfully, you haven't seemed to have stumbled down that path at all recently. Tell me, how did this group come together? Because you didn't call it My Place. How did it come together?
No, I've never actually heard of My Place until I watched one of your videos about a week and a half ago. So as someone I'm looking at down there would say, it happened organically. It is the answer. You find the answer to what you need by thinking about what you need. In my situation, I'm not the leader. I'm just the person who organises the rest of the group. Everyone in the group is a leader, and you draw strength from everybody. Everyone has something to contribute. So you listen to everyone, you hear all the angles. Not everyone will agree. People will have opposing views. But the thing that I've found in our group has been superb is the willingness to compromise. So they'll have their say, they'll hear someone else's, and then everyone will agree on some path. The infighting and the egos and so on just don't seem to happen.
I think a large key to that is the fact that people are heard. It doesn't mean that everybody has to act on what they had to say, but it does mean a lot to anybody, I think, that you are heard, that your opinion matters, and you've at least had some input. And I think I wouldn't find too many people that would disagree with me here or online when we say we have none of that in our current council system, or those people who are trying to do good are suppressed and eventually shunned and eventually kicked from those councils. This has to change. I had a person say to me the other night in Sydney, I think it was, councils just develop infighting. Why would your people's council be any different? You've really, I think, explained or gone a long way to explaining why a thing like a people's council that comes out of a group like this will succeed, because it's about listening, it's about hearing people and then acting in the community's best interests. And I imagine that's how those decisions are sorted out. You know, when people stand up, they say something, go with the flow.
Yeah, so you've got to digest all the different angles and try to work out both logically and emotionally and so on as to what the right path forward is. And you have to recognise that you'll make mistakes. Not everything that's been done by the group's been perfect. Not everything that I've done by any stretch of the imagination has been perfect.
Yep.
But you've got to be willing to bare your soul and say, look, I've made a mistake. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. So we have at the start of our meetings on a Friday night what I call the State of the Nation address. And that evolves over time. One of the things I've introduced just recently is successes and failures, where everyone from the floor can talk about, well, what's gone on for the week, you know.
Right.
And so last week, for example, I'd planted a whole heap of peas. So that was a success. The following week, the chooks had got in and scratched out all the peas. That was a failure. But there's a learning process. So everyone who learns something shares it so that everyone doesn't have to reinvent the wheel on everything.
Just got to keep that closer to you.
Yep.
Okay, so what about in times of adversity? You guys have recently been through some torrential rain, some flooding. There's been damage to roads, homes and others. How does your community come together when that kind of thing affects it?
Brilliantly. I'm so proud of how they have handled the last two incidences we've had. The amount of cooperation and concern between people is just, it must be what our grandparents just thought was normal, but we've all lost it. So sharing generators, I haven't got fuel, so I'll send some fuel on the mail car up, and people who didn't have somewhere to stay or didn't have food or the electricity's been out, or just the amount of sharing and cooperation and interaction and everyone ringing everyone to find out how they are. And it was just astounding at how well people acted together because they were interested in each other. It is a big family. We have certainly formed a family and everyone cares. There'll be nobody who doesn't care about every other person in the group. Yep. It's just something to behold. It really is.
So you've formed this group. You've formed a fellowship, if you like. Do you work extensively in the community or just helping each other in your, working in the wider community, rather than just the insular group that you've created?
Largely at this stage it has been insular. If you look at how things would have started, one of the concerns I had, there's a whole history, that's something I sent you, you'll have a read of. The fear in the early stages of the COVID scamdemic was that the corrupt elements of the government would try to steer the vaccinated against the unvaccinated. And the comparison to Nazi Germany and the Jews having their Star of David and convincing the German people or propagandising the German people that how bad these different groups were and so on, that was a concern that I had. That was largely what started the group, is my concern about that. And when I'd first got married and we went to the UK, I was working with a Zimbabwean ship's engineer, and his parents had land in Zimbabwe. And there was a lot of trouble in Zimbabwe at that stage with the native Zimbabweans wanting their land back at knife point.
Right.
And so there was a radio network between all the farmers that if things were going bad, we're seeing people gather on the northern boundary, the radio call would go out and everyone would rush there. or else you were going to be macheted to death. That was going to be tomorrow's situation, is you'll be found macheted.
Wow.
And so it got pretty serious. And my concern was it could do that here too.
Yep.
And we don't know which direction things will go in. So you need to be one step ahead, not one step behind. So our first meeting that we had, one of the guys brought along a lot of radio stuff. He's a radio tech guy, and started educating us. So we've tried to set up our own radio network between us, that if communication fails, we can still communicate. And then it just kept flowing on from there in a lot of what you would call prepping activities. So growing food, preserving food, how do I get on if there's no refrigeration? How do I get on if there's no electricity, etc. Trying to build our strength and resilience. But we've evolved. I think we've moved to a point where we need to do more. We've got our little patch happening fairly well. Still a lot to learn and a lot of training. I've got a long list of training that we want to do. But I think we've got to look outwardly more than we have done. So we have been insular. And that's...
It's got to be difficult doing that at times, because simply mention of the word prepper to somebody automatically means that you wrap yourself in tin foil and
see what's coming before it gets there.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
The shortage of conspiracy theories in America is because they've all come true, but we'll have to invent some more.
Yep. So how do you convince people in the wider community then that they need to come and join yours to learn the skills that will help us all as we move forward into whatever's coming?
That's about the point we're at the moment, is looking at, so we're certainly a growing group, but it's more of the same that's being attracted because it offers what the people who are aware know they need. I think we need to try and increase the awareness of those who aren't aware, the fact that they need to be aware, and that's going to be very difficult because they've got the blinkers on, they don't want to know. You know, there's cognitive dissonance and it's all too hard. They don't...
Oh, I know plenty of people, men and women, who love camping, provided there's a 5-star hotel wrapped around the bed that you're camping in.
And a TV.
And a TV and air conditioning and a pool and, you know, maybe a spa downstairs. That's a big thing to ask people to give up. And when they say prepper, they have a picture in their mind, I assume, of a hermit living under a large mushroom with, in your case, a Tasmanian devil in a wheel, creating energy to turn on a light bulb somewhere. That isn't the reality of prepping.
No, not even close. In essence, if you think of prepping is imagining what could happen that is a negative outcome and doing something about it. So it's not unlikely that there'll be a fake food famine. Okay, if you think there might be a food famine, let's sort out the food side of things. Don't be dependent on outsourcing your food. So if you can grow your own food, then you have resilience. If it doesn't happen, there's no harm in growing your own food.
No.
It's actually way better than what you're going to buy anyway. So it's a positive step. If nothing happens, it's all gain anyway.
And if you have a bit of land and you can grow a bit of food, then you become a resource to your community, because unless you're really big and really hungry, you're never going to be able to eat everything. And you'll get sick of the beans or the lettuce or the spuds or whatever it is that you're growing. And you'd like to swap that for some lemons and some oranges and apples and associated other bits. And this is where your community's already at. And I don't know whether it's a potential to be able to hold markets from what you're already producing, but maybe inviting others in who might be part of it. I know that's what Darren Bergwerf is doing. Their Sunday markets, while not the largest markets in Melbourne, are certainly the best feeling markets I've ever been to. I mean, and I get the same feeling here. It is such a feeling of community, of warmth, of genuine interest. I was speaking before, I think I said before to Andrew, and I was alluding to the fact that, you know, we come to these sorts of events and he feels so comfortable coming from where he is, you know, an outlander down there in Launceston, because we're all reading the same book. You know, I've been harping on about the book for a few days, but, you know, that's why we have this community feel. Now, if we can get a few more people to open the book, and you might be only on page 2 or 3 or 5 or 500, when they open the book, they're going to find something in it that you didn't, and we're going to learn from it. And that's important, I think, for everybody to understand, that only through growing our community, listening to everybody's concern, and that gets back to what you were saying before. If you're in a community, you have to be able to have your say, at least be heard and know you have been heard. You may not win the argument, your idea may not win the day, but ultimately what does win the day will be the majority decision of the community for the best outcome for the community. I think that's the way we need to look at it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And it's good to hear other opinions, because the easy thing is to get stuck in your own mind, and you can see your logic and you can be sure that you're right. Doesn't mean you are right.
Yeah.
So you need to hear the other opinions and be open-minded enough to try and reprocess whether your ideas are rigid. Well, not rigid, it's not the word I was looking for. Whether you can take on other things and adapt,
Yes,
and improve your position. So ego is an important thing not to have take over. And I would say, well, I can't think of anybody in our group who has an ego problem.
Yeah.
They're all very open to new ideas. And, for example, one of our next training is going to be blacksmithing. I don't think a lot of the girls are probably going to do all that much blacksmithing in their coming years.
Probably not.
But they're all interested to have a listen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I bet.
so it can be diverse, and you just never know what they might get out of it or what they might put into it too.
Might get a whole new heap of tools for the barbecue if the
Yeah.
boys get a hold of it, I reckon. Whole new heap of toys. And Kevin from Australian Survival Specialists, or Instructors rather, he will be overjoyed to hear you're into that, because he runs a course for it. I was too chicken to do it. I reckon I wouldn't be able to raise my hand after a week of banging. So, but I am going to go back and give it a go. Blacksmithing,
Yeah.
what a fun. I actually would have thought that there'd be a bit of that going on up here. So
There is.
Yeah. And wood turning too, I'm told, because
Yeah.
I don't mind a bit of wood turning. Thank you, Peter, for letting me in on that. So I guess we've sort of covered how you found the group, how you got it together, and where directionally you'd like to take it. Can we help in any way to try and bring more people to North Motton, to this area? Look, everything is so close here. I guess you guys might see, 10 minutes up the road is a long way because you're used to doing it, but I couldn't believe
I was in Kununurra before I was here. People go 550 kilometres to Catherine to get a McDonald's. So
yeah, that's when they didn't know what was in it.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, I found today, our drive up today, somebody said it takes an hour and a half, Paul. I didn't feel like an hour and a half to me. It felt like half an hour. Beautiful scenery. And well, there's a lot of water around. I imagine those mushrooms that you guys are living under up in the hills have probably been washed away. You've got something a bit more sturdy. Are there, up in the hills, because I've heard in the northwest of Tasmania, there are plenty of people living up in the hills that are way off grid.
I'm off grid.
Okay.
Yeah, there's quite a few in the group who are off grid.
Is it hard to set yourself up to do that? Because
No.
we get a lot of inquiry about it.
First thing you've got to do is change your expectation. The more expectation you have, the harder the job will be. So when you're setting up, say, a solar system, the common thing to say is, instead of trying to increase how much power you can generate and store, decrease your demand. So if you want to dry the clothes, hang them on a line. You don't have to put them in a dryer to do it.
No.
That's just got rid of a whole heap of energy. So just revisit your lifestyle. And most people first off would say, oh, I couldn't do without this and I couldn't do without that. But it doesn't take very long, and then you just realise it just doesn't matter. Those things aren't important. And you'll simplify your life and reduce your energy demands, and you'll enjoy it more and more.
So when you say simplify your life,
So don't put clothes in a dryer, just hang them on a line. Go out when they're dry.
or just don't bother wearing the clothes because there's no neighbours to speak of anyway.
Wear them again the next day. They'll last another day.
I don't know. It's a bit chilly.
That's why there's a gap between us, because I didn't get a shower today.
That wasn't a technical issue on your
I had
behalf.
one last month, so I'm not due until next month again. So.
I'm really pleased you covered up the Band-Aid on your shoulder where your head used to be too.
A friend of mine says I'm obviously not Tasmanian. If I had two heads, I wouldn't have kept that one. He is a Tasmanian.
Yes. Well,
I think he's only joking, though.
No. I can tell you that my Tasmanian driving around has done more two-headed jokes on me than I ever thought I could possibly do. So it's all been great. I guess that's a bit like the Irishman, though. Every Irishman knows every Irish joke ever told. So
and New Zealanders know sheep jokes,
but
they may not be jokes.
Oh God! Well, I was going to say it was a beautiful drive down here today. I saw the cows chewing cud, the birds were chirping, the sheep were still wearing masks.
That's it.
Are you struggling with that at the moment still? Just that cognitive dissonance of people you meet in the street?
It just astounds us. We haven't done any masking at all. It's like, seriously, you people still don't you read anything?
It's very hard to get the bit of bark to stick around your mouth.
Yeah. So.
Especially when you've got to wind the twine to do it with, I would have thought.
And it does become difficult because when you're aware that it's all a fraud and it has no scientific basis and it's just lunacy, then you see people doing it, you think, seriously, you haven't worked this out yet. This has gone on long enough. You should have picked that none of it's real yet, but they don't. No.
And I mean, I imagine like the rest of us, you've lost friends, you've lost family because you've tried to gently wake them. And then when they haven't been gently woken, you've rung the fire alarm and that hasn't woken them either.
Yeah, to my family's credit, they have remained humane. They still talk to me. They think I'm an idiot to some degree, but that's coming around too. And so you've got to win the battles you can win and don't have the ones that you're going to lose. So pick your targets and just chip away at it. And so I've got members of the family who are now starting to be a little bit interested and, what do you reckon about? Or so you win them back if you haven't broken down the relationships entirely. So that's on you just as much as it's on them.
Yep.
They think they're right, just the same as we think we're right.
Yep, I agree.
And so it's a bit of a war of attrition. But certainly to have a new family is a good thing. There's people in our group who have just felt, initially they thought that they were the only ones who hadn't been jabbed, and you're almost in a jail in your own house because you're not game go out because of the fear of what might be. Yeah. And when they found the group, it just relieved the tension enormously, and that's a really gratifying thing to be able to be in the service of other people and do such a nice thing for people, quality people who deserve something better than what society is giving them at the moment. And I imagine there'll be a lot of people who've been vaccinated and done the wrong thing in various ways who will be very remorseful. When they eventually work out that they were totally wrong, it's going to be a very bitter pill to swallow to apologise for the inhumane way that they've dealt with people who they thought were wrong, and they've got to accept that they were wrong. And a lot of people won't have the courage to be able to admit their fault. It's going to be a long, hard battle.
I think that's going to be one of the saddest parts of all of this. I think we're going to lose a lot of people that, we still love and respect, even if they don't share that love and respect back again anymore. And it's hard when you see people close to you go through injury and there's nothing you can do. It's even harder when you see people going through that injury that were coerced into getting it, that they resisted and resisted and resisted, and it was only because of the financial pressures placed on them by banks and the financial industry that they eventually succumbed to the jabby jab. So unfortunately, a lot of those people are very regretful, very remorseful, very sorry, and also very, very sick. Did you happen to see today's greatest news story, folks? There is now the COVID extreme, it must be extreme death or something coming our way. They've discovered a new variant. No, it's like called, the extra horror version or something. It's a ridiculous name. They're just trying to ramp up the fear again. Keep you running. So don't take any notice of any of that crap, especially if you've watched it on morning TV, for God's sake. Yeah, not worth playing around with at all. How are you dealing with, well, I don't suppose being a prepper, you watch a lot of TV. How do you get a bit of an idea? Do you have any following of what's going on in America, for instance, at the moment, and how all that's going to play out? Be careful what you say. We always used 45. Otherwise, that other name associated with 45 gets us in trouble. So the communication that you're finding, the channels that you're following, the intel that you're gathering, what's it telling you?
It's an interesting journey that when all this first started, I used to watch just about everything that you could get your hands on, finding every source that you could. And we'd started a Telegram group to communicate amongst ourselves. So each person would be putting up the most important thing they'd found for the day, and we'd religiously watch all of it and so on. Certainly for me, and I think for most people in the group, we're past that stage. If I see the headline, that gives me the idea of what the next fraud is.
Yep.
And so I'm aware of what I need to position myself on. So the fake foot and mouth disease outbreak that's going to start must have been a real disappointment for them that monkeypox failed. They probably invested a lot of money into monkeypox, and that was a complete failure.
Oh, it was a hell of a joke, though. I mean, didn't we love it?
Yeah.
So good.
But certainly for us in our journey, we're past a lot of the politics. So now we're looking at, well, what can we do? What's a positive action that we can do to actually make a change, not just fearmonger? And I often wonder if all the uncensored channels and all the information that's available was impacting the cabal, then they wouldn't let us have it.
Yeah, you're right.
So obviously it's not impacting them. I know one of our ladies I'm looking at is into quantum, and my estimation, not knowing anything yet about quantum, she's going to deliver a training session for us, is that they're probably deriving some benefit from the fear porn, as they call it, and they can lead us by letting out information that they want us to have.
Yeah.
So other than seeing some of the headlines, I've given up on all of that now because it's no benefit to me.
Yep.
What's important is that I build the resilience and build the community that is the solution. And I look for solutions. And someone else I know said, because I seek guidance from everyone in the group, someone challenged me with a Bible reference that said, you know, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall become sons of the earth, I think it is. Sorry if I'm a misquote. And I thought, well, that's a really challenging thing. You want me to fight a war by being a peacemaker? Wow. That's an ask. Now I'm going to do that. So as I've walked around, I was mowing the lawn the other day, and as I said in a message, that my body was engaged mowing the lawn, but my brain was in idle. So I thought about it, and I came up with an approach, which actually I might share here because it might be beneficial.
Please do.
So the cabal can only achieve what they achieve because they've got the enforcers to enforce it.
Yep.
So if the police and or military were aware and wouldn't do what they were asked, well, they're stuffed. They can't do it.
That's right.
So it's only that they have the enforcers that they can make any of it work. And one of our ladies down there expressed something fearfully the other night at training, and I thought, oh, that's really sad. She's feeling that she doesn't have any power. So I thought, well, how does she have power? Because I don't believe that she doesn't have power. And I thought, well, and she loves this. I call her a little old lady these days. Mm-hmm. She's going to boof me one of these days when she's close enough. And I thought, well, all these enforcers, so let's say the police, they're just people in uniforms.
Yes.
They're just everyday people, and they pull on the uniform and they go and do their 8-hour shift or whatever, and they do as they're told. If they didn't believe in what they were doing and wouldn't do it, then it finishes if there's no enforcement. But at the moment, they believe, or they're not willing to stand up to do anything about it. So what would this little old lady be able to do about that? She feels helpless. Well, these policemen have mothers.
Yeah.
So if this little old lady goes and talks to the policeman's mother and explains what's going on and can convince them of what the problem is, mothers always have influence. Doesn't matter whether you're 95 and your child's retired 10 years ago, they still have influence. So via the mothers, we may be able to awaken the enforcers. And if one enforcer recognises the problem, and then someone at work says, "Oh, let's see what we've got to do tomorrow. I'm not really looking forward to that," the discussions will start. 2 will become 4, 4 will become 8, and you white ant the enforcement from the bottom up, because the problem is at the top. We aren't able to solve the problem at the top. We need to get the people to be moral and take responsibility, so there is no enforcement.
Or probably or the police, who hitherto have not joined us, need to know that they will be welcomed. While you wear that uniform at the moment, it's not very welcoming. But take that uniform off and join us. And there are a number of ex-police that are very heavily involved in the freedom movement and very vocal. There are a number of ex-police organisations speaking out against everything. So there are people with training that could essentially, I suppose, help in that regard. Now, we're not talking about anything like a revolution or a revolt or anything. It's simply a discussion about what is required. And I had this same or similar discussion with somebody in Melbourne at Frankston when he was telling me about a common law court they were setting up. And I said, "Oh, that's great. What are you going to do with that?" "Oh, we're going to bring 7 policemen or something in front of us." I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. How are you going to do that? What enforcement arm are you using to bring them before you? And after you assumedly found them guilty of something, how are you going to enforce whatever punishment the court inflicts?" That's about where the conversation ended. Because until we have any way of enforcing the people's will, not the government's, that's the key here. It's all to do with our will, the people's will, the best thing for the people. And until the police realign and start taking an oath again that is to the people, not the corporation that they're getting paid from, I don't know that much is going to change. But I do think that there are good coppers out there, and certainly in the groups that I've been talking to, they are very motivated to help. And I think at the right time they will stand up and probably form part of the skeleton that is the enforcement arm of whatever comes next. They do have training. Some of it might be incorrect. They might need a little bit of re-education, and certainly the legal process will change from one that's controlled by government, and it will return to one of justice that the people control. Hopefully, absolutely, it has to be with trial by jury. So if anybody's interested and you're in Tasmania and you're interested in learning about trial by jury or common law, all next week we'll be in Mornington Inn, which is down near Hobart. And on Monday night, we'll do a live show. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fitz and I will do 2-hour Magna Carta 12:15 sessions. If you want to take the oath at the end of those, you're more than welcome. At least at the end of them, you'll have an idea of what oath you're taking, how important it is, whether or not you feel it's something you can stand by. All we ask is that you get informed. Nobody says you have to take the oath. All we ask is that you get informed. So if you'd like to come, then the Mornington Inn is the place. 1 till 3, I'm looking, 1 till 3, I'm getting the nod. On Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Love to see you if you want to come in and learn a little bit about that. What are you guys doing regarding common law? Are you into it? You're not into it?
Yeah, there's quite a few in our group who've been involved, and another group nearby was running the common law, which I got involved with. It's been fantastic. Thank you for making the effort. Very much appreciated. So it's a matter of becoming aware. The more you study, the more you realise the amount of deception and lies and trickery that the system is based on. and the further away from that which the people agreed to, such as a constitution, that we're being dragged. So I think our position at the moment is we've got to get that information out to as many people. We've got to, if you want to use the viral term, you've got to make that viral. You've got to, if everyone understood the deceptions, the deception would cease. It's only that people assume that the courts are reasonable and all the constitutional matters are followed and all the rest of it. The more you find out, the whole thing has been debased. The whole thing is a fraud. Maritime law instead of common law or God's law or natural law or whatever term you prefer to use. Everything's been taken away from us with this facade of something that you think is real, but it isn't.
Yep.
And so we've got to educate. Education's the next thing. So, you know, to go back to that, how do you fight a war by being a peacemaker? Well, the piece of paper is more powerful than the sword.
Yep.
And education is going to be more important. Awareness is important. The first thing they want us to do is get the firearm out and start shooting, because they will decimate us. They will outgun us on everything.
Yep.
And so when they're pushing you in that direction, you'll obviously know that that's not the direction to go in. So if they're pushing vaccines, obviously don't do vaccines. If they're pushing social distancing, we give each other hugs.
Yeah.
So, and I think we'd have been the most healthy mob in the state when all said and done. Very few people got sick.
Yeah.
Nobody died. Nobody got jabbed. So, but even on that, I'm just looking down. Some did. Some weren't aware. Some were taken in by the deception. And now that they've found the deception, it's like, well, how did you know? How did you? So we've got to be with open arms for those people who've been deceived. We're deceived.
Yep.
Just about everything we think is true is still a deception. We're still finding out the layer after layer after layer of deceptions that run our lives. It's just phenomenal how they've managed to pervert everything.
Ask that when people are made aware of those deceptions that you refer to, some of them are horrifying, heinous crimes. Some of them are going to be very difficult to look at, to consider, to think about. Others are going to be arguments that are just divisive for no other reason than to be divisive. Avoid the divisive arguments at all time. And the one I'm going to use to demonstrate is the flat earth theory. Okay? If I was to stand up here and tell you I believe the world is flat, and you all think that the world is round, and we have an argument about it, you walk out of here thinking, oh, that Leibold's a bloody idiot, you know, what sort of a tin hat's he got on to think the world's flat? At the end of the day, what difference does it make? It's still going to take 23 hours to fly from Brisbane to London. It's still going to take 15, 16, 17 hours to fly from Melbourne to Los Angeles. Nothing's going to change, not unless the aliens land, give us that propulsion thing, and it all gets a lot quicker. And then we won't give a shit whether the world's flat, round or triangle shaped, as long as we get there faster, and we don't have to line up at bloody borders to get through, or wear a mask, or have something stuck in us. So that would be the nature of the arguments I would ask you to look out for. Fight the fight that's worth fighting, and do not bother engaging in the bullshit divisive argument. Who cares if the world is flat? It makes no difference to your life or mine, other than we've been lied to all our lives, if it turns out to be flat. Now, if it does turn out to be flat, what's the next question you're going to ask yourself? Why did the bastards lie to us about it? Why? Because it doesn't matter to us. It doesn't matter. Who cares if it's flat? The rain is still going to fall from the sky. The rivers will still rise and wash away roads and houses at that appropriate time, provided the engineering goes right. You know, you've got to fly those planes in the right area or nothing's going to grow. It doesn't make an ounce of difference. So when you come across people that want to argue with you and want to be divisive, analyse what they're saying and ask, does it really matter? Give it the does it really matter test. If what you're pinning your argument on, or they're pinning their argument on, and they feel so strongly about it that they would walk away from your friendship, ask, what does it really matter? What impact is it going to have on our life? How is it going to change our friendship if the earth happens to be flat? And I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, what if it is? I don't care. It opens up more interesting questions for me more than anything else. It opens up a whole heap of rabbit burrows that some people might have been down, and a whole heap more that none of us have been down. All because of that question, why? Why would they lie about something like that? Because that's the next question if the world turns out to be flat. Not, shit, I was lied to all my life, and getting upset about it. It's, why did they do that? Because it doesn't matter. Like I say, not until we get, I was going to say anti-static propulsion, but that's not what it is it? Electromagnetic propulsion and all those sorts of great things. It's not going to matter one iota how far the world is away from us, or whether it's on the other side of the globe or on the other side of a plate. It does not matter. Do not engage in divisive arguments that do not matter. Fight the fights on the ones that do. But there's no point in being divisive. And I get from you and a couple of people that I've spoken to already that there is no division. There is only unity. And if someone has an issue, it's discussed openly, without any kind of, hissy-fitting and carrying on. And decisions are made from that. And
so
humanity... You haven't had to hang anybody, have you?
Not yet, no.
There you go. So it can be done.
I've been close a couple of times. I think the little old lady's just about ready, and someone I got to talk last night said if they had to talk, they were going to kill me with a knife. They were going to actually injure me with a knife and then finish me off with a brick. But I must have done all right because I'm still here. And she's still talking to me.
Yeah, knives aren't drawn yet. I haven't seen anybody throwing them. But, the night's only young.
But it's important. Humanity is important. And I think this is one of the things that we've learned out of this. There's times where we think that the cabal have done us a favour because they've allowed us the great reset of our brains about what's important in life. People are important in life. How you treat other people is important in life.
Yep, 100%.
And that's the thing that's just been astounding in our group, is it's brought the best of humanity out in the people. To anyone who had a problem, everybody else in an instant would be wanting to find the way that they could help. So whatever their strength is that would overcome the problem for the other person is offered in an instant. So the materialism, the money hungriness of people, you just look at it, it's just evaporated out of our group. So when we're talking about growing food, and I was mentioning last night at the meeting, so I've just put in 98 pumpkin plants, and someone said, that's a lot of pumpkins. What are you going to do with all those pumpkins? Well, give them away.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, there's nothing in that process that has anything to do with money.
Yeah.
Because why would you bother?
Pumpkins grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if someone says, I haven't got anything to swap for your pumpkins, well, just take the pumpkins. It's only a pumpkin. It's not like it matters.
Yeah.
But it does to a lot of people. So many people...
You could make a killing tomorrow, Halloween.
I don't think they've grown quite enough for that just yet. No, they're only about that high yet.
Lots of little demons around. You'll be fine.
But, we've been trained by the endless propaganda of advertising to want things. Everything is about things. The latest car, the latest phone, the updates. It's all things. Yep. And the things is what's tearing apart society. Families are being destroyed because of the want of things. I haven't got the things that I want, and so on. And so we'll do inhumane things to each other because we haven't got the things.
Yeah.
But forget about the things. They don't matter. Yep. The people matter. That's exactly right. And that's certainly a journey that I've had and learned a lot from in the last couple of years, and certainly the last year by being with this group, is the amount of education. If you listen to people and you actually care, then there's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience and a wealth of understanding that people will offer you.
Yeah.
but you've got to be ready to hear that and take it on board.
There is that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
Exactly,
But
yes.
it takes the village to build a community. And with every new person you introduce, hopefully, the community grows that little bit bigger, the village grows that little bit stronger.
And so how do you fight a war? By being a peacemaker.
Yeah.
So you find the ways. You genuinely look for the answers that satisfy that, and they're there. One of the things I've learned recently is the system, the government and so on, always tries to offer you two options. So there's I'll say I didn't want to pay some parking fines because my understanding is that that's unlawful. So I fought that. So the system they have is, so you're not paying our fines, we'll cancel your driver's licence.
Yes.
Well, there's a High Court ruling that says you can't do that. So I sent them that and they said, we don't care, we're doing it anyway. So that, they're lawless.
Yeah.
And so they just keep applying pressures to coerce you to do what is unlawful. And now I've forgotten where I was going with that. That's going to look good on video, isn't it?
Don't worry about that. Happens to me every night. So you brought up a very good point. There is a lot of unlawfulness going on, and we can't
everything, almost everything. The more you study, it is all based on frauds.
So
just
at the moment,
phenomenal.
Councils are big news everywhere I go at the moment. Everybody wants to talk about their local council and the lack of work that local council is doing for the people. Why are the people electing councillors who don't work for the people? How has it got to this point?
Gradualism, communism by gradualism, little by little, just every little step. No step looks enough to be bothered getting up in arms about, but they just keep stacking up. It's the frog in the water. The temperature just keeps going up and you just don't notice. So there's just 1,000 little steps added on top of each other gets you to where you didn't intend to be. So, for example, when I was fighting the parking fine situation, I was using references to the Constitution as to why it was unlawful. Well, apparently, I've found out since that Tasmania doesn't follow the Constitution. We've reverted back to the colonial Constitution. Oh. When you go back to the 1934 Tasmanian Constitution, there's a provision in there to create local government. So it is lawful for them to do it, but it's not lawful for them to have that bloody Constitution in the first place.
That's right, yeah.
So it's a premise based on a falsehood that gives them the authority to achieve what they can't achieve. So you have to, it just, all the layers, you've got to keep peeling back layers. But how do you fix that? Yeah. Someone made the decision at some point to corrupt the process, and it wasn't fought then. So we just have to keep chipping away. We have to, whether that's creating parallel communities and just leaving the system to its own devices to collapse by lack of numbers involved, or whether we take to the streets, or whether we take it to the courts or whatever. We have to find the ways to wind back all those problems. Otherwise, the gradualism of communism will have taken us over. It's darn close now.
So what's our next step? We're sitting, for many of us, we believe, on the cusp of new things happening. The 8th of November, and I don't usually give out dates, but I am going to say the 8th of November is significant. That's the American 8th, not the Australian 8th, for you trolls out there who don't know the difference. That is the date of the midterm elections in America. If those elections go ahead, frankly, I think everything that we've been talking about the last 2 years or more is on very shaky ground. I don't believe
the problem is, it doesn't matter who votes, it's who counts. So having an election, we're now certainly aware, is almost just a facade. It's just theatre.
So why would the people bother walking up and sticking their vote in the box then?
Well, we've got local government elections. I don't even know when they are because I'm not doing it.
Yep.
So I'm advised that the AEC, the Electoral Commission's only reason why your compulsory voting can be got out of is because you're deceased. So when you look at the voting papers that are sent to you in the mail, your all caps name is who it's addressed to.
Yes.
That's a deceased estate. Yep. So I write on mine, return to sender, deceased estate. And the postal law says if it's not addressed to me, because I'm not the all caps name, that's a corporate fiction, then the postal law says that I'm breaking the law if I open the envelope. So, okay, I'll use their laws against them. That's what one of my friends says, is use the system against itself.
Yes.
So their laws say that I can't open something that's not addressed to me. That's not me.
Yep.
That's the corporate fiction. That's the, as they use the term in Australia, the artificial person.
The straw man.
So let him open it.
Yeah.
He can go and vote. Bugger off.
Bugger off. So just on that point, have you had much success? Have they chased the straw man or chased you to get you to represent your straw man after those sorts of interactions, or do they just walk away?
Well, certainly with the consent, the census.
Yep.
They followed me up a bit about that, and
Me too.
I told them why I wasn't doing it, and so they said they'd report that, and nothing's happened.
Yeah.
So, and this is, I think, where we're at, is we have to have the courage to stare them down. It's lies and deception. If you comply, we watched a video clip from Michael Gray Griffith's little movie that he puts out, and if I ever got the chance to thank that young, was she Romanian nurse, that is the most moving talk I think I've ever had. I think I've cried multiple times over that clip. And I just want to thank her for what she did in standing up like that and motivating people to grow a spine, because you can't comply your way out of tyranny, as she says.
Yeah.
If you just keep doing what they want you to do, you'll get more of the same.
Yep.
So as you find the deceptions, as you find what's unreasonable, just don't do it anymore. And, okay, you'll pay a price. You're already paying a price because you're under almost communism already, and it isn't going to get any better. It's only getting worse. So until you learn to grow a spine and do something about it, welcome to your world.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
So every little thing matters. You just have to rebut every little thing if you want to turn this around. Otherwise, that's what you're going to have for life. And as I mentioned last night, we did our training talk last night was on communism, quite a bit of a change from pressure cooking and all the other things that we often do, blacksmithing. Now I've lost my train of thought again.
Communism chat last night? The communism chat last night?
Yeah, no, it's gone.
No, it's gone. So you decided communism wasn't for you?
No, I don't think, doesn't look appealing.
No.
Some people want to say, I had one person say, look, I'm a fighter, I'm a lover, not a fighter. Well, that's all lovely, but it's not your choice. They've already made the choice for you. So you're either a fighter or a loser. If you don't do anything, you've already lost.
Yep.
You may lose if you fight, but you're giving yourself a chance.
That's right.
And you have to make the effort. They've determined what they want to have. We're cattle class. We are traded on the bond market like a commodity, the same as grain or anything else. If you think that's a good way of living, just keep doing it. The only problem you've got now is they've decided there's too many cattle in the cattle class and they want to get rid of 6 or 7 billion of you, and I bet you're not on the list to be kept.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to do something about it, well, you'll own the outcome. So we've had our go. We're at an age where we'd like to live on for another 30 years, but what about my kids and what about my grandkids and then their kids? Do they say at some stage down the track, oh, Grandpa, what did you do in the Great Awakening? And I say, I hid in the bushes, but I had a jar of pressure preserved carrots in my back pocket, so I was good. It's just not going to cut it.
No.
You're going to have to learn to do what you can. And that doesn't mean little old ladies go out and beat up policemen in the street.
No.
But you have to find whatever it is.
Turns up a sponge at mum's place, though.
That's it.
Whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you have to find the ways that you can make a difference.
Yeah.
And there will be lots of them. So I started to say one about open doors. The government often, when I was doing this parking fine thing, I was arguing it and the director rang up and I had a good chat to him. It wasn't a nice chat. We did get a bit heated in a few spots. And he said, well, look, you've got choice. He said, you can either fight it in the courts or you can pay it. And I said, well, that's all lovely. There's 2 open doors. I'm looking for more open doors. It could be other things. And he thinks from me and says, we could pay it off by instalments. I said, yes, that is another choice. That's not quite where I'm going now. So there will be solutions. There'll be ways to escape.
Yeah.
But you've got to go looking. You've got to find it wherever you can find it. So whether that's in discussion with community, with advice from elders, with advice from anyone around you, whether you get it from the good book, wherever you get, you've got to be looking. And so in our group, we're always talking about that. If 50 people are all thinking and coming up with ideas, we're more likely to find the chinks in the armour.
Yep, and the solutions to the chinks, because everyone might have, as I keep saying, we all have a small part of the ultimate solution. All we've got to do is fit ourselves together. That's all we are. We are the weapon. We are the future. We have to unite. We have to be shoulder to shoulder. We have to be resolute. There will be hard things that have to be done, but we're not going to send little old ladies up the front to do those hard things. There'll be plenty of other hard.
In her case, I think she'd be okay up the front. When you get a cranky, then I think she'd go all right.
Yeah, there looks like there's plenty of other blokes in this room who'd happily stand up too, though.
Yeah.
So, and I think that is the same in the world.
We'll push her forward. Come on, Helen, you can do this.
Oh, getting into it now. Look out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great community you've built here, and I don't mean you've built, folks.
Yeah.
It's all of you. Give yourselves another round of applause, because it really is a fabulous community. It is a my place. You don't call it that, but that's what it is, and I'm sure
We're a gardening group.
Yeah, you're a gardening group. Yeah, and pressure cooker group.
But diversity is the strength. Often you'll think if I had 50 big, strong men, I'd be in a better position. No, you need to recognise that the diversity is where you're going to get the answer from.
Yep.
So the person who is into quantum will give us an answer from one angle. The medical people will give us answers from other angles. This lovely lady who talked last night when she didn't want to talk, but found the courage to do it, gives us an insight into communism and what it's like living in communism, so that you can compel people to understand the situation they're in, and that helps grow the spine that's needed to actually do something. Because if it's not our kids or our, yes, off with your head, she's going. If it's not your kids, but it's your grandkids, they're depending on this generation not being weak.
Yeah, exactly. It's about not being weak. It's about stepping up, standing up. And as Ricardo said in the last week or so, it's about stepping forward, not standing still or taking a step back when we're confronted with evil or confronted with wrongdoing. Step forward. It is the braver option. Some people can do it, some people can't. Doesn't mean you're worse off because you can't do it, but everybody can do it. And when you do it, if you're so worried about it and you do it the first time, I'm going to say it's a bit like sex. You lose all the fear, but you don't know what my first sex experience was like. I was scared for years.
You think you were? How did she get on?
Well, she was the same age as me, but yeah, it was. Yeah, no, we won't get into that.
No, I think we're heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
there.
you
We'll
Tasmanians
skip that.
have an effect. It's something to do with the hills and the water, I bet. All right, we will move on. Thank you very much for coming up and having a chat. I'm not going to run too long tonight, folks, because I know it's a cold night. It's a Saturday night, and I don't usually do shows on a Saturday night. But because we got to come to Tasmania and the North Motton Hall, thank you all for coming out. Does anybody have any questions that they want to bring out? And I'll get Phil to hand over his microphone if he would. Anybody got any questions? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no? Oh, got some information to share down the back. Righto. Try and meet each other in the middle. That'd be great. No cameras, folks, so you'll hear a voice. But trust me, there is a body attached to it. I know it's
everyone.
Halloween.
Thank you first, Carl, for coming to Tasmania. It's a great honour to have you here. Thank you, Phil and Jenny, for inviting me here tonight. So I'm actually on Ricardo Bosey's team, building the army and saving Australia.
Wonderful.
So I'd just like everybody to know that I have the petition here. I think most of you have signed it, but it's to have the orders lifted, for the pedophiles in our government.
Sure.
And then I also have an email list there if anybody's interested in getting any information off me and coming together as a community in A1 as well. And then there's just some merchandise for sale there, I think, and some invitations.
How are you going with A1 here? You've got a bit of a following?
I've had some very good shows, like especially in the last summer. So I'm hoping that things are going to pick up again. It sort of cooled off a bit, and so did the people stay indoors over winter, but that was okay.
Oh, I can understand that. It's
Yeah,
not winter,
yeah,
and I
that's
wanted to
right.
stay indoors for a fair part of yesterday.
So I've had a good, 70 people show up in Devonport. I've done information sessions at Burnie and Wynyard as well, because I am the Braddon supporter group leader here. So trying to work my way down the coast, but haven't quite got there yet.
You might have to bring that microphone a bit closer.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
So if anybody's interested anyway, it's great to have you all here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Anybody else got a question? Down the front, Paul. So if you've got a question, just put your hands up, folks. We'll get the microphone to you. Sir.
Thank you. John from Ulverston. My compliments to Phil, because I think you'll find everyone here will agree he hasn't led the group, but he has represented the group honourably. And I believe he's helping us to build a community, our future, one person at a time.
Yeah.
And I believe it's becoming a transparent community, because we all know or share information that's actually helping us all become more responsible in our actions and more responsible for creating our future by doing something, not being complicit and not doing something. And that is an important thing that we're learning.
So, John, the start of what you said there began to sound a little bit to me like a militant neighbourhood watch. But that's not what this is about, is it?
No, we are totally passive, resisting what the authorities at the moment are trying to force upon us. And we are, from the ground roots, trying to establish what we feel is honourable for us and just. And as Phil has said, we're in a dance situation where we've stepped on toes, but we're still in the formation.
Yeah. And you are open to discussion, compromise, growth, all from within.
Even when we're not right.
Even then. That's great, John. Thank you very much. Wonderful. And yeah, Phil, I think 100% you guys should be congratulated. You should all be congratulated. I know Phil's the only one who's being seen at the moment, but everybody part of this group, and I don't know, there's a bit over 100 people here maybe. So thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for being part of the crew. And I know that we are going to get a lot of requests. I spoke to you about this earlier, Phil. We're going to get a lot of requests. I already get a lot of requests about, how do I go about prepping? And I've been following the Ricardo Bosi order of go out and buy some spaghetti and go out and buy some pasta sauce and put it in a dark place in your cupboard. But you have offered a bit of a resource list you might be able to share that we can put up on Voice of Freedom HQ and that maybe help people with, Phil. So thank you. Can you give us...
Make a bit of something there for you to try and help with that. One of the key things you want to consider is that you need to be a producer, not a consumer. And I've added to that a bit. You need to be a producer and a preserver, not a consumer.
Is the preserving process difficult, hard?
Definitely not, because I can do it.
There's a lot of laughter coming from the back of the room down here. You blew something up, didn't you?
Yeah, no, all the time, yes. I don't generally cook anything for here because we don't mass food poisoning. So the ladies do a fabulous job of that. So let them do that, and I'll just pretend that I'm doing other things.
You're all right when it comes to drying the meat, though, aren't you?
I'm getting there. Yeah. Yep.
Bit of practice makes perfect. You know how to dry meat, folks? We might have a tip for you. And I don't think a match is involved. It should be all right. No more questions, folks. Anybody else got anything for us? Oh, yeah, got a comment down the front.
Yeah, Darryl from along the northwest coast. I'm really honoured to be here and listen to you guys talk. This started for me probably about 40 years ago when I was a union rep and a member of an affiliated political party. I saw corrupt behaviour going on, so I decided to expose it. You will run into a lot of controversy. You will get pushed, you'll get squashed and crushed. But I'm still here. Yep. And one thing I admired Phil for saying, and one thing I learned when I was travelling through the mining industry as a troubleshooter, I didn't even want to get into the mining industry to start with. I only went to do an interview for a practice to get into the paper industry. Wow. They offered me a position and I took it and had 30 odd years in there.
Wow, great.
But every problem or challenge comes with an attached solution. Yeah. Don't continue to focus on the problem and you'll automatically start seeing the solutions. And
that's
thanks.
Very wise, Darryl.
Yep, thanks for your input, Phil. And
thank you, mate.
Yep, good,
very happy. Thank you very much to the people who've invited us down here, made it possible to come down here. In fact, Paul is one of those people. I'd like you to give Paul a round of applause because...
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that very much. And there's one thing I'd like to say. Just remember, if we all stand together, we will win this. One stick alone will break easily, but a bunch of sticks together, very hard to break. That's all I really got to say.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. He does usually speak a bit more than that, but only when we're in the car. Going around corners, not so quick. No, we're just cruising because I want to see everything in Tasmania. I'd like to apologise to everybody as we came out of Launceston this morning. If you were following us, you were probably doing about 5 kilometres an hour because I was hanging out of the car with my phone taking pictures up the gorge. So I apologise, folks. That's just how you're going to see me for the next week, travelling around Tassie, taking photos of things and hopefully telling you a bit. Tomorrow, we're back to Launceston. We're at the Cock and Bull Hotel in Launceston tomorrow night and then off the next morning bright and early down the east coast. We might stop in a couple of places and maybe do a couple of short lives. And then on Monday night, we'll be at the Mornington Inn for another big show there. And then, as I said before, some Magna Carta education for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, we're going to have another live show. Don't know where that one will be yet. We're still deciding that one, aren't we, Paul? We could be anywhere yet. And at some point, I plan on getting to Port Arthur and we'll hit the button and go live from there at some stage. Maybe during the ghost tour, if they'll let me. We'll ask. All right. Thanks again very much to everybody who's come tonight to the North Motton Hall. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support for the Voice of Freedom, for Ricardo Bosey, who I do believe is the man who should be leading this country and hopefully very, very shortly will be stepping up to tell us why he is going to be leading the country. I think the next 2 weeks in particular are going to be extremely interesting, and I think the next month before Christmas after that is going to be very enlightening indeed. So hang on, the ride's going to be wild, but you already have your community here, and just bring more people into it. That's all I can say. And folks, if you're at home and you're thinking about living off-grid, getting into a community, contact Phil. We'll put you in touch. If you need to get details, Phil will sort you out because he has a bunch of very well-skilled people here, all of which are happy to help. Thank you again, folks. Give yourselves another round of applause as we head out tonight. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow night, folks, from Launceston. Have a good one.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!